Hello everyone, CephalonKet here. So I was not sure if I was going to make this video, but I kept thinking about it, so here we are. We are going to talk about romances, specifically romances in Dragon Age the Veilguard, and how they compare to previous Dragon Age games. Let me preface this by saying that yes, I will most likely say negative things about your fave, so do not watch this if you are going to get insulted. I am sharing my opinions, and you do not have to agree with them. Also, I will most likely mention spoilers for all Dragon Age games, so probably don't watch this if you care about spoilers for any of the Dragon Age games and their romances. So the main reason I wanted to make this video is because after playing through 2 of the romances in Veilguard, I am frankly extremely disappointed. I liked the game, though I have many criticisms about it, but this is not a review video for the entire game. I first romanced Davrin, and after getting to his final scene I was like, wow, that's very little content. Then I romanced Lucanis, and apparently it can get worse. The problem is not the content that is actually in the game. When there is content, like specific scenes with your love interests, the scenes are good. I love the coffee scene with Lucanis, for example, early on. It was a very strong start, and that's what makes it even more disappointing, because then you have such empty air for hours until the next proper romantic interaction with them. I enjoyed the first kiss you get with Davrin, the almost kiss with Lucanis, and the final romance scene with both of them. The problem is the quantity and the pacing. Oh, and before I forget, if you romanced Emmerich, this is not about him. Emmerich apparently gets a disproportionate amount of romance content compared to the other companions for some reason, including multiple kisses, an exclusive date, and I regret not romancing him on my first playthrough to get the most out of my romance. So, quantity. Now, I know it's been 10 years, and even more if we go by previous games, but wow was the content slim in Veilguard. Apparently Davrin is one of the better romances in the game, and even he gets 0 unique scenes if you romance him and gets 1 kiss before the final sex scene. What happened there? Let's compare to the previous Dragon Age games. Let's take Inquisition, as it is the most recent previous Dragon Age game and had the most evolved romances. I'm talking exclusive cutscenes, that sort of thing. In Inquisition, we have the build-up with the flirting dialogue options, where every companion reacts in a unique way. Put a pin on the react part, because we're going to come back to it. Then eventually, usually when you get Skyhold, each of the romance companions gets a scene that gets altered accordingly, based on if you romance them or not. The first one I can think of is Blackwall. If you've been flirting with him, his scene turns into a "we shouldn't, my lady" scene, where he feels guilty because he's a lying piece of garbage and tries to resist your advances. You then have the option to continue or stop his romance right there. Then eventually, we have the continuation of the romance, where Blackwall just cannot help himself and comes to your room to kiss you. This is outside of multiple dialogues, by the way, you can have with him at any time, and various flirts you have thrown throughout. This scene and equivalent scenes with other characters do not happen if you're not romancing them, obviously. Then some time passes, and when he's ready to progress his character storyline, he sleeps with you and then lives to be a better man. After sleeping with you under false pretenses, but that's not the point of the video. Fuck Blackwall. Anyway, then after that, it's not the end of the game. The game and the romance does not conclude after you have sex, because that's not how relationships work. Instead, it's just a stepping stone in the narrative of your romance. Long story short, Blackwall was lying this whole time, and you get the option to accept him back or not, your choice. You can also kiss him at any time and talk to him about things at any point in the game, making it feel more natural instead of rushing from point A to point B in the story to unlock the next interaction with him, which happens in Veilguard, unfortunately. Blackwall's romance, which I very clearly hate, is not an exception to the narrative quantity and quality of the content. Even though I dislike him as a character, his romance, for those that enjoy that type of thing, is very high quality and with plenty of content to satisfy. So why did Davrin feel so lackluster? If you compare Davrin's romance scenes with a non-romance Rook, he has almost no differences except for when you softlock in the romance with him confronting you if you're interested, and having an almost kiss that gets interrupted by a sun for the first time, because a sun is basically 80% of his narrative, and then when you are in Arlathan Forest feeding the Hala, the scene you usually get has an extra kiss in it, and guess what? You get interrupted by a sun again. And that's all you get until the final chapter, where Davrin meets you to have sex and share some sweet words. Once again, I'd like to say, when there is content, it's good. But there is so much empty space in between the content. There are also no unique scenes outside of the existing ones that you get, regardless of romance in the character or not, excluding Emmerich. The pacing is also way off. Every romance concludes in sex. Like that's the end-all be-all. Clearly, they took example from Mass Effect and how it handled its romances, but somehow Mass Effect did a way better job of not making it feel like there was so much empty space in between scenes, probably due to the much more linear narrative. And the characters in Mass Effect are way more mature, and so you don't feel like you're going from a chaste, leave room for Jesus romance straight to the sex, which really throws me off. My second example is Cullen, but I'd like to talk about Cullen when I compare him to Lucanis, and I will explain why that is. I've seen people claim Lucanis' romance is amazing because there's just so much unsaid and implied. Here is my problem with that. The game does not show you this. Codex entries do not count. Outside media does not count, okay? Lucanis is supposedly fighting with himself and his want for you, and that apparently translates to the game not responding to any of your flirting, or have him react, or have any special scene besides the almost kiss, the cafe scenes, and the sex scene at the end. Remember when I mentioned to put a pin on react? This is the main problem with Lucanis. He simply does not react to the flirts you do with him 80% of the time, except for the romance scenes. The majority of his romance is you picking the flirt line, and then Lucanis simply not reacting to it. It's like you didn't even pick the flirt option. Common excuses I've seen aside, I'm going to show you why this bothers me narratively, and why I don't think the lack of content should be excused as show don't tell, and other excuses to imply that the fact that Lucanis has no romance content outside of some crumbs is actually narrative genius. Let's remember Cullen from Inquisition. While they are both very different characters, they share some similarities in their romance. Both are apparently shy and unsure. They struggle with their wants and their demons, literally for Lucanis, and figuratively for Cullen due to his lyrium addiction. Yet who presents his romantic interest even though he's unsure of his feelings? Cullen. Why? Because when you flirt with him, he shows his uncertainty, he shows his shyness. It's not you clicking a romance option to trigger a romance flag and then the game acting like you didn't pick it. Cullen is also an advisor, meaning he is not a companion. Due to this, he gets less content than the companions you can romance, yet he still has multiple scenes that you get as a romance character. Can talk to him whenever you want, kiss him after you lock in the romance, and has a sex scene that is not right before the conclusion of the story. What is my point? That this formula used in Inquisition and past Dragon Age games should have carried over to Veilguard. Firstly, it should have been more mature in general. Dragon Age is a mature game, yet despite this, Veilguard seems unsure of itself in that regard. Even though every romance scene concludes in sex, before that you are barely touching your love interest or sharing one kiss. Emmerich excluded again. Companions should have had an equal amount of romance content. Take Emmerich for example, and make that amount of romance content equal in quantity. Companions should have had exclusive romance scenes, not the normal scenes that get slightly altered when romanced. Don't be afraid to get physical. Don't just talk 2 meters apart, properly show your attraction to Rook and vice versa. You should be able to talk to companions at any time, this goes for non-romance to companions too, even if you repeat topics. Then also have a repeatable kiss once you lock in the romance like previous games. Except Dragon Age 2. The romance should not conclude at sex. Sex should just be one of the narrative points before the conclusion, not the conclusion. This is also ignoring the fact that there is no way to have a non-sexual romance in the conclusion. which I think it would be a nice inclusion since the game tries to be very inclusive with sexualities and identities and stuff, but that's another story. Anyway, these were my thoughts regarding the romances in Dragon Age the Veilguard, how they compare to previous Dragon Age games, and how they could have been improved. I did not mention even all the romances such as Morrigan, Zevran or Anders to keep the video short. If you'd like me to talk about them, let me know. What did you think about Veilguard's romances? Were you also disappointed or enjoyed it for what it is? Did you romance Semric and so won the game? Let me know in the comments below. That's all for now. See you later!